Part 1. The Dream of Learning English. Carlos always dreamed of speaking English fluently. Since he was young, he would watch English movies and listen to songs. However, he could never fully understand them. One day, he found an ad for a 3-month intensive English course. He thought, if others can do it, so can I. Excited, he enrolled, even though his friends doubted he could achieve it in just 3 months. Determined, he set his mind to it. At the beginning, the lessons were hard. Carlos struggled to understand grammar rules and vocabulary. He felt overwhelmed and discouraged, but he knew that to achieve his goal, he had to push through. So, he began dedicating time every day, listening to English podcasts and repeating phrases. Every small achievement made him feel proud and motivated to continue. Carlos didn't stop there. He started watching English TV shows with subtitles to learn pronunciation and phrases. Though it was tough at first, he noticed he was picking up more words. The sentences were no longer completely foreign to him. He began practicing speaking out loud, even if he made mistakes. It was frustrating, but he didn't give up. In the first month, progress seemed slow. He still couldn't have a proper conversation in English, and his confidence was low. However, every time he made a mistake, he learned something new. Carlos reminded himself that learning a language was a journey, not a race. He kept going, knowing that his hard work would eventually pay off. Despite the difficulties, Carlos saw small improvements. He understood more words in his favorite movies. He could write simple sentences in English without looking up every word. By the end of the first month, he felt a little more confident, but knew he had a long way to go. But he was determined, and that's what mattered the most. Part 2. Facing Challenges. The second month was when things began to change for Carlos. While the first month had been all about learning the basics, the second month focused on practicing. Carlos started talking to native speakers in language exchange programs. At first, he struggled to keep up, but he realized that real conversations would help him learn faster than anything else. His nerves made it difficult, but he knew it was necessary. Carlos made many mistakes, but instead of feeling embarrassed, he embraced them. He understood that making mistakes was part of learning. Every time a native corrected him, he wrote the correction down. He started using those words and phrases in his daily practice. Slowly, his speech became more fluid, though he still had a long way to go. To improve his listening skills, Carlos began watching TV shows and movies without subtitles. It was hard at first, but he felt that it was helping him understand the language in context. He focused on the tone and rhythm of the language. He learned new phrases and expressions from these shows, making his speech sound more natural. His vocabulary expanded, and Carlos noticed that he was starting to think in English instead of translating in his head. The process wasn't perfect, but it was a significant improvement. He felt proud of the progress he was making, and the frustration of the first month was starting to fade. At this point, he was talking to native speakers almost every day. Carlos also set small goals to track his progress. He would aim to learn 5 new words every day. By the end of the second month, his understanding of English had grown significantly. He was able to engage in basic conversations, and he felt more confident. It was clear that his hard work was paying off. Part 3. The Turning Point. By the third month, Carlos could see a clear difference in his abilities. He was speaking English much more comfortably, and the fear of making mistakes had mostly faded. He realized that the key to mastering English was not just memorizing grammar rules or vocabulary, but actually using the language. Speaking and writing every day had improved his fluency. Carlos had started thinking in English, a major milestone. He no longer had to translate words from Spanish to English. This made him faster at understanding conversations and expressing himself. The first time he had a full conversation in English without translating felt like a huge victory. He realized that the more he practiced, the easier it became. One of the biggest breakthroughs came when Carlos spoke with a native speaker for an hour without feeling lost. He understood almost everything they said and could reply without hesitation. At that moment, Carlos realized that he was no longer just studying English. He was using it as a tool for communication. He was starting to speak naturally. Carlos began to speak with more native speakers in real-world situations. He had a great experience ordering food in a restaurant and talking to locals in English. These real-life situations helped him develop more confidence. The language no longer felt like something foreign, but something he could use to express himself. As the third month came to a close, Carlos was amazed by how much he had learned. He had gone from knowing barely any English to being able to hold conversations confidently. He realized that the most important thing was persistence. The key to learning quickly had been consistent practice and a willingness to make mistakes. Carlos felt ready to continue improving his skills. Part 4. Testing his skills. The end of the third month arrived, and Carlos was determined to put his skills to the test. He booked a trip to an English-speaking country to immerse himself completely in the language. He was nervous but excited, knowing that this experience would help him further develop his abilities. His goal was to have real conversations with strangers and use English in everyday situations. At first, Carlos felt a little unsure of himself, but as he interacted with people, he realized how much he had improved. He could understand the locals, and they could understand him. He had no trouble ordering at cafes, asking for directions, or having small chats. Though he still made a few mistakes, he was no longer afraid to speak. Carlos also made friends with other travelers, which allowed him to practice English in a casual setting. He learned new expressions and slang that weren't taught in the classroom. These conversations helped him feel more comfortable with the language. By the end of the trip, he was amazed at how far he had come in just 3 months. The immersion experience taught Carlos that learning English wasn't just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It was about living the language, using it in real situations, and practicing every day. He felt confident that he could continue improving, and that this trip had been a huge step in his learning journey. When he returned home, Carlos realized that he had not only learned English, but had also gained a sense of accomplishment. The 3-month challenge had been difficult, but it had shown him the power of perseverance. He now knew that learning a language was possible if he stayed motivated and practiced every day. Part 5. Looking forward. When the 3 months came to an end, Carlos reflected on how far he had come. He had accomplished more than he had ever imagined. His fluency in English had improved dramatically, and he was no longer afraid to speak. He knew that language learning was a continuous process and that there was always more to learn. But now, he felt equipped to keep going. Carlos understood that language learning was not just about memorizing words. It was about immersing yourself in the culture and using the language regularly. He realized that with enough practice, anyone could learn a language quickly. The most important thing was to stay committed and keep going even when things got tough. With his new skills, Carlos started thinking about his future. He wanted to continue improving his English and maybe even travel more. He also considered taking more advanced courses to refine his grammar and vocabulary. His passion for learning had only grown stronger, and he was eager to take on new challenges. In the end, Carlos realized that the key to his success wasn't just in the time he spent studying, but in his willingness to step out of his comfort zone. The 3-month journey had transformed him, not just into someone who could speak English, but into someone who was confident in his ability to learn new things. Carlos knew that his journey with English was just beginning, but he had already achieved something incredible. He had proved to himself that with dedication and hard work, anything was possible. And now, he was ready for whatever came next. Part 6. New challenges ahead. After completing his 3-month course, Carlos realized that learning English was just the beginning. He had developed a strong foundation, but now he needed to work on refining his skills. He set new goals for himself, aiming to become fluent in various areas, such as writing, listening, and speaking. Although he had made great progress, he knew he still had a lot to learn. Carlos started reading more books in English. At first, he struggled with complex vocabulary, but he didn't let that discourage him. He made a habit of looking up new words and writing them down. Soon, he noticed that he could read more quickly and understood more of what he read. This new habit helped expand his vocabulary and improve his overall comprehension. Listening to English radio stations and podcasts became part of his daily routine. Carlos learned to appreciate different accents and pronunciations. He understood that there wasn't just one right way to speak English. The more he listened, the more his ear became tuned to the language. He could now follow conversations that were faster and more advanced than before. Writing in English was another area that needed improvement. Carlos started writing short stories, essays, and even keeping a journal in English. He had a lot of mistakes, but each correction helped him improve. Writing regularly allowed him to practice grammar and sentence structure. Over time, his writing became more natural and expressive. Carlos also joined an online English club where members discussed books, movies, and current events. This was an excellent opportunity to practice his conversation skills in a more relaxed setting. He noticed that speaking English no longer felt like a chore. It felt like a normal part of his daily routine. He became more comfortable expressing his thoughts in English. By the end of the year, Carlos was no longer the beginner he had been 3 months ago. He was speaking, writing, and understanding English at a level he had once thought was impossible. Yet, he knew that learning a language was an ongoing process. He looked forward to more challenges and adventures as he continued to improve his English. Part 7: Immersing himself in culture. To further improve his language skills, Carlos decided to immerse himself even more deeply in English-speaking cultures. He began watching documentaries, reading articles, and listening to interviews with people from different parts of the world. He realized that language was more than just words. It was a reflection of culture and values. One of his most memorable experiences was attending an international conference in an English-speaking city. Although he was nervous, Carlos saw it as a chance to practice English in a professional setting. The conference was full of people from all over the world, and Carlos was amazed at how easily he could engage in conversations about various topics. He was no longer intimidated by the language barrier. Carlos also spent more time traveling to English-speaking countries. He volunteered in a local community center during one of his trips, which helped him interact with people from diverse backgrounds. This experience was invaluable, as it not only improved his language skills, but also gave him a deeper understanding of the world. He learned how language connected people and opened doors to new experiences. He also started reading books that explored cultural differences, which gave him new perspectives on the language. He discovered how slang and idioms were deeply rooted in culture, and how understanding these nuances helped him sound more natural when speaking. Carlos realized that true fluency came from understanding the cultural context of the language, not just the grammar and vocabulary. With each new experience, Carlos's confidence grew. He was no longer the shy student afraid to make mistakes. Instead, he embraced the challenges and saw them as opportunities to grow. He understood that being fluent in English wasn't just about speaking well. It was about understanding the culture, engaging with others, and continuously learning. Carlos had come a long way since he started his journey. He was no longer just a language learner. He was a global citizen using English to connect with the world. He had discovered that the best way to learn a language was to live it and experience it in real-life situations. His English was stronger than ever, and his love for learning had only deepened. Part 8: Reflecting on Progress. Months passed, and Carlos often found himself reflecting on how far he had come since he first started learning English. The progress he had made seemed almost surreal at times. When he first began, it was hard to imagine being able to hold a conversation in English, let alone write essays or speak at an international conference. But now it felt like second nature. Carlos realized that the key to his success was not just studying hard, but maintaining a positive attitude and staying motivated. He remembered how often he wanted to quit in the beginning when things seemed too difficult. But every time he felt like giving up, he reminded himself of his goals. His persistence had paid off, and now he could speak, write, and understand English at a level he was proud of. He thought about all the moments when he had struggled, when he couldn't find the right word or couldn't understand a conversation. But those moments were no longer as frequent. Carlos had developed the ability to understand English even in fast-paced conversations. He could express himself clearly, and he no longer felt the need to constantly translate in his head. Carlos understood that learning a language was a lifelong journey. There was always room for improvement, and he knew he would continue to encounter new challenges. But he no longer feared making mistakes. Instead, he saw each mistake as a step towards mastery. He had learned to embrace the learning process, knowing that it was through the struggles that he had grown the most. He began to think about how he could help others learn English. Having experienced the challenges firsthand, Carlos felt a deep empathy for other language learners. He began teaching English to children in his community, helping them gain the confidence that he had once lacked. It felt amazing to give back and share the knowledge he had gained over the past year. Carlos's story was a reminder that anything was possible with determination and the right mindset. He had achieved something incredible in a short period of time. He was proud of what he had accomplished and excited about the future, knowing that his English journey was far from over. Part 9. Teaching Others. As Carlos grew more confident in his English skills, he realized that he could help others who were struggling, just as he once had. He began tutoring students, offering them advice on how to learn a language effectively. He shared his own experiences and encouraged them to keep going, even when things felt impossible. Carlos's approach to teaching was not just about vocabulary or grammar. He focused on building his students' confidence. He remembered how frustrating it had been in the beginning when he couldn't express himself properly. He made sure to create a supportive environment where students felt safe to make mistakes and learn from them. In addition to tutoring, Carlos organized informal English meetups where students could practice speaking with native speakers. These gatherings were a great way for students to improve their conversation skills in a low-pressure setting. Carlos noticed that the more his students practiced, the more confident they became. Carlos also started creating online content to help learners of all levels. He made videos and wrote articles with tips on improving English. His goal was to make learning English more accessible to people everywhere. He wanted to show others that it wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. Teaching others reinforced Carlos's own knowledge of English. Every time he explained a concept or helped a student overcome a challenge, he learned something new himself. The process of teaching also allowed him to revisit the basics, which kept his own skills sharp. Carlos was excited to continue sharing his passion for English with the world. Through teaching, Carlos discovered that his love for the language had only deepened. He realized that by helping others, he had become a true expert in English. His journey had come full circle, and he was more determined than ever to keep improving and helping others do the same. Part 10. Continuing the Journey. Carlos had come so far in his English journey, but he knew there was always more to learn. His skills had improved beyond his wildest dreams, but he was not satisfied with simply reaching his current level. He wanted to continue exploring the language, learning new expressions, and engaging in more complex conversations. He started focusing on advanced areas like business English and technical vocabulary. He took online courses to improve his writing skills for professional purposes. Carlos also began reading more challenging books, including academic texts, to push himself even further. He knew that mastering English was a lifelong pursuit. Carlos also realized that the more he learned, the more he discovered how much he still didn't know. This realization didn't discourage him, it motivated him. He understood that learning was an ongoing process, and that made him eager to continue. He was excited for the future and all the new opportunities that would come his way as he improved his English. In the end, Carlos had not just learned a language, he had transformed himself. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had shaped him into someone who was capable of achieving his dreams. He knew that he could tackle any challenge that came his way, whether it was in English or any other area of his life. Carlos's journey showed him that success is not about reaching the end, but about the growth and transformation that happens along the way. Every step he took brought him closer to his goals. Now, he was ready for whatever new challenges awaited him, knowing that he had the skills and determination to overcome them. Part 11. Embracing new opportunities. Carlos's journey with English continued to open new doors for him. He began applying for jobs that required English proficiency, knowing that his skills would give him a competitive edge. It wasn't easy, as he faced many rejections at first. However, each failure only motivated him to push harder. He refined his resume, practiced interview questions, and started learning professional jargon. One day, Carlos received an invitation for an interview at an international company. He was both excited and nervous. This was a big opportunity, and he knew that he had to be prepared. He spent the days leading up to the interview practicing his English, ensuring he could express himself confidently. The interview went better than expected, and Carlos was offered the job. The new role required Carlos to work in a multilingual environment, interacting with colleagues from around the world. His English skills were tested daily, and he found that he could keep up with his peers. He participated in meetings, wrote reports, and even presented ideas in English. It was a steep learning curve, but Carlos felt proud of how far he had come. Working in an international company also exposed Carlos to different accents and dialects. This helped him further improve his listening skills and adapt to various ways of speaking. He started to feel at ease even when speaking with colleagues whose English was not perfect. He realized that communication was about more than just grammar. It was about understanding and connecting. Carlos's job gave him a sense of accomplishment. He knew that without his dedication to learning English, he would not have had these opportunities. He had worked hard to reach this point, and now he was reaping the rewards. His confidence had soared, and he was eager to take on new challenges, knowing that English was a tool that could open many doors for him. The experience also reinforced his belief that learning English had changed his life. It had given him a new sense of direction, and he had gained the ability to connect with people across cultures. Carlos felt proud of his journey and motivated to keep growing, both personally and professionally. Part 12. Spreading the knowledge. As Carlos settled into his new job, he realized that his passion for English had only grown. He wanted to share his knowledge and help others who were on the same path he had once been. He started mentoring junior colleagues, offering advice and sharing tips on how they could improve their language skills. Carlos also began organizing English workshops for employees at his company. These workshops were designed to help colleagues improve their speaking and writing abilities. He used the same methods that had helped him learn: practice, consistency, and embracing mistakes. His workshops became quite popular, and many employees started feeling more confident in their language abilities. Seeing the progress of his colleagues was incredibly rewarding for Carlos. He had come full circle, from being someone who struggled with English to becoming a mentor who was guiding others. His workshops allowed him to reflect on his own growth and recognize just how much he had achieved. It felt incredible to give back and be part of others' learning journeys. Carlos also continued to share his knowledge outside of work. He created a YouTube channel where he posted videos about learning English. In these videos, he explained common mistakes, shared vocabulary tips, and gave advice on how to practice speaking. The response was overwhelming, and Carlos received messages from learners around the world, thanking him for his helpful content. Through these efforts, Carlos built a community of English learners who supported each other and shared resources. It wasn't just about learning a language. It was about creating a space where people could encourage one another to keep improving. Carlos was grateful to be part of this growing network, and it pushed him to continue improving his own skills as well. Helping others learn English had become a huge part of Carlos's life. He realized that teaching was not just about giving knowledge. It was about inspiring others to believe in their potential. As he continued to mentor and teach, Carlos found that his passion for the language only deepened, and his journey was far from over. Part 13. Cultural Exchange. Carlos's love for learning English soon led him to explore other cultures in greater depth. As he connected with people from around the world, he realized that understanding a language went hand in hand with understanding different worldviews. He began participating in cultural exchange programs where he could practice his English and learn more about the cultures of others. One of his most memorable experiences was when he hosted a cultural exchange event at his workplace. Colleagues from various countries came together to share stories, food, and traditions. Carlos was fascinated by the diversity of perspectives, and it made him appreciate the richness of the English language even more. He understood that every word, phrase, and expression was influenced by culture. Through these experiences, Carlos learned to appreciate the subtle nuances in language. He began using phrases and idioms that reflected different cultural backgrounds, making his speech sound more authentic and respectful. This broadened his understanding of how language connects people across cultures, and he saw the importance of cultural sensitivity when learning and speaking a language. Carlos also traveled to several countries to immerse himself in local cultures. He practiced his English with locals and learned to adapt his speaking style to match different cultural norms. Whether it was formal English for business meetings or casual English for social gatherings, Carlos became adept at adjusting his language to fit the context. Participating in cultural exchange programs not only improved his language skills, but also made him more empathetic and open-minded. He learned to appreciate differences rather than judge them. By engaging with people from different backgrounds, Carlos expanded his worldview, and English became more than just a tool for communication. It became a bridge to understanding the world. As Carlos continued his journey of cultural exploration, he felt more connected to the global community. He had gone from a beginner who was afraid to speak to someone who could confidently navigate conversations with people from all walks of life. His English had become a key that unlocked doors to new experiences, new friendships, and a deeper understanding of the world. Part 14. Personal Growth and Self-Reflection. Carlos's transformation through learning English had a profound impact on his personal growth. He often took time to reflect on how far he had come, and he was amazed at how much he had changed since the days when he could barely speak a word of English. The language had not only expanded his professional opportunities, but had also opened doors to personal development. He realized that the process of learning a language was about more than just acquiring new skills. It had taught him resilience, patience, and the importance of consistency. He had faced many challenges, but each obstacle had strengthened his determination. Learning English had given him the confidence to tackle other areas of his life with the same mindset. Carlos also saw that learning English had improved his ability to connect with others on a deeper level. He was more empathetic and aware of the struggles that language learners face. This new perspective helped him build stronger relationships, both personally and professionally. He learned that true success was not just about achieving a goal, but about the growth that happened along the way. He had become more self-assured, not just in his language abilities, but in all aspects of his life. Carlos began taking on new challenges, whether it was taking a leadership role at work or pursuing hobbies that he had once been too shy to try. His journey with English had given him a sense of empowerment that extended far beyond the language itself. Looking back on his journey, Carlos was proud of everything he had accomplished. He had learned a new language, traveled the world, built relationships, and transformed his life. However, he knew that his journey was far from over. English had opened a new chapter in his life, but there were still many more chapters to write. Carlos's story was a testament to the power of persistence, self-belief, and the transformative effect of learning a language. He had come a long way from the uncertain beginner he once was. Now, he was a confident, multilingual individual, ready to take on whatever the future held. Part 15, The Road Ahead. Carlos knew that mastering English didn't mean stopping his learning journey. It meant continuing to explore new horizons. Now that he was fluent, he set his sights on even greater goals. He dreamed of becoming an English teacher and helping others achieve the same success he had. He also wanted to publish books and articles, sharing his experiences and insights with others. To further his career, Carlos began taking advanced courses in linguistics and English literature. He wanted to deepen his knowledge and become an expert in the language. He also planned to pursue a teaching certification so that he could help others learn English in the same way he had once been helped. He was excited about the future and the many possibilities that awaited him. Carlos understood that learning a language was not just a short-term goal, but a lifelong commitment. He knew there would always be new words to learn, new accents to understand, and new cultures to explore. He was ready for these challenges, as he had already proven to himself that he could achieve anything he set his mind to. As he continued to grow in his career, Carlos stayed focused on his passion for language. He began teaching English to students online, providing one-on-one lessons and group classes. He enjoyed helping students break through their barriers and achieve their language goals. Teaching others gave him a sense of fulfillment, and he was proud of the impact he was making. Looking to the future, Carlos felt confident that his journey with English would continue to shape his life in positive ways. He had come so far, and there was still so much more to explore. He was excited for the challenges and rewards that lay ahead, knowing that no matter what happened, his mastery of English would always be an asset. The road ahead was full of endless possibilities. Carlos's journey was far from over. Every step he took, every lesson he learned, brought him closer to his dreams. He was ready for whatever came next, knowing that English would be the key to unlocking even greater opportunities.